Hey there and welcome back to another Percy Jackson and the Olympians Season 2 review, and today we're going to be talking about the latest episode to drop, episode 7, I Go Down with the Ship. This follows off from the big battle on the island of Polyphemus where Annabeth was injured and healed by Luke with the Golden Fleece, before he takes her with him to his ship with the others in pursuit on Hippocampi. A much shorter episode than the norm this time, which was a bit of a shame, and so I hope the finale next week is a bit longer than this. It'd be pretty crap if they finish off the second season with yet another short episode. Anyway, nothing else for it but to jump into it, so let's go. Oh, and yes, just so everyone's on the same page, we're going to be dealing with a full spoiler review, so be forewarned in that regard. Spoilers, not just for this book, but pretty much any in the franchise, and so if you care about that, this is probably not the video for you. We start off witnessing the aftermath of Thalia's battle with the Furies that ended up with her being turned into a tree. Apparently, they don't come back to help her until it's broad daylight, and Thalia's long dead / turned into a tree. So Luke, Annabeth, and Grover arrive and sound the alarm, but no demigods assemble to go protect camp. Hell, even this assembled group doesn't look like it has any armor or weapons with them, and they're just there to gawk at the tree. I can see why Luke is salty here. On top of that, Zeus could have made a strong barrier to protect camp right from the get-go, but he doesn't because rules or some shit, and rules that he probably invented, and instead he gives Thalia a form of eternal life by turning her into a tree, which is in essence a terrible fate. I know that in this world trees do have a consciousness, but to go from a human to a tree, that would suck, and you know it would. I think it would drive most people insane. If this happened to my friend, I would be very pissed off. Annabeth then awakes aboard the Princess Andromeda, and I do have to wonder how this even happened. Wasn't Luke escaping from the island aboard a stolen sailboat? Surely the Hippocampi could have managed to keep up with him, right? He wasn't even out of the bay when they surfaced and came to help the group. For me, the timing is all off, but hey, it is what it is. Annabeth wakes up restrained and underneath the Golden Fleece, which has completely healed her wounds, which is where Allison bursts in and takes the fleece off to Kronos' coffin. Here we check in on the ship itself, which is apparently docked in Port Jefferson for some reason. Why? Who knows? Maybe it's to let all the normal humans off the ship before they double back towards Camp Half-Blood to attack it in force. Did they ever explain this? One of the officials, who has a very humorous little interaction with the dockmaster or whatever that job title's called, is then lured into a bathroom by Allison's voice, where he's ambushed by the team. It's revealed that he's a child of Aphrodite who attempts to use his charm speak on Percy to get himself out of trouble, only to get immediately slapped down by Clarice. I did love though that he just immediately spills everything, from where Annabeth's located to where the fleece is located. There's no violence towards him, it just cuts to him sitting there smugly as Tyson ties him up. It kind of upped the stakes for me, to tell you the truth, as it shows that he's completely sure of the defenses on the ship, that he's going to give the exact coordinates just like that without a care. Either that or he's not very committed to the cause. They take a keycard from his jacket, and this is where the tension begins to build again between Clarice and Percy. Clarice wants to go upstairs first and get the Golden Fleece. Percy, however, is still 100% eager to try to save Annabeth instead. Grover bursts in and reveals that he was unable to contact camp and that the entire Iris network's likely down. And I do wonder, how's this even possible? Isn't it controlled by the goddess herself? Surely they couldn't be strong enough to take her down just yet. All in all, it does seem like a pretty low-level rebellion. Is that not the whole point of the fleece? That the stronger Kronos gets, the stronger their forces are going to get? Anyway, whilst Clarice is busy thinking about how this means that they have no way to contact the camp either for reinforcements or to warn them, Percy snatches the keycard and tells her that the ship's going to be heavily guarded, but the fleece even more so. Thus, they need to get Annabeth back first. This leads to Clarice blaming Percy for them being in this situation to begin with, and so Percy throws her prophecy back in her face, which gets her to stand down long enough to hear his plan, and then snatch the keycard and push him down as she storms off. I think what I liked most about their disagreement is that in the end, they both end up doing the opposite of their plan, and it feels like it was 100% necessary for it to play out this way. Percy does go to find Annabeth first, and it ensures she's free of her bonds to prevent her getting murdered, and whilst the guards are distracted downstairs, it gives Percy almost a free run at the fleece except for fighting Luke, whereas it could have been worse before. Meanwhile, since Clarice went for the fleece, she was in the perfect spot to go and save Annabeth when she heard that they were going downstairs to execute her. I also just like the poetry of each of them doing the opposite of their original plan. Clarice gets Annabeth out and prioritizes friends over the mission, and Percy, granted on Annabeth's orders, chooses the quest instead of getting her out of the ship. I just liked how it was executed, and it made for some cool moments. Percy decides he'll just have to go it alone, and that Tyson and Grover need to arrange for transportation back to camp, and they're probably the two least equipped to do this, but sure. On the bright side, whilst there is tension in the hero camp, at the same time, there's also a lot of tension on the villain side of things. We get the latest confrontation between Allison and Luke, where she's taken the fleece without orders to put on the coffin, and she also questions why Luke was using it to help an enemy to begin with. They have a bit of a stare down, and this is really not the first time it's happened across the season. There's clearly significant tension between these two characters, and it is going to come to a head soon, surely. Perhaps next episode? She does seem to have a bone to pick with Annabeth in particular, and Luke is not so far gone yet that he's willing to make that sacrifice, I think. To be honest, I don't think she survives the season, as you only need her around so long as Luke is not a hardline Kronos supporter at any cost. Once he reaches that point, you no longer really need her, and I think he's getting closer and closer. That being said, they do seem to be going with a much more sympathetic Luke portrayal, so maybe they do keep her around for longer. Also, side note, but I do wonder how they're going to start to showcase demigod deaths. Are our heroes eventually going to start killing people? I feel like that's something the book sort of managed to sidestep, where you'd see them fight other demigods sometimes, but it wasn't lethal. the deaths would come from monsters or off screen. As far as I can remember, the only time we actually see Percy or Annabeth or whatever kill a person is when they fight Luke right at the end. Are they going to hold off on that here too? There is a big battle coming up in the next episode after all. It's very curious. We then move on to Clarice and Percy both making their separate ways onto the ship and towards their own objectives. I just love how unsubtle they both are. Top secret infiltration mission and they're just both wandering in the open. Clarice is striding through the corridors and even stops by to steal some food and snoop on some of the weapons they have in the locker room. However, it does make sense for her because she's a child of Ares and is ready to rumble. That's who she is. However, Percy has the invisibility cap and yet is standing around gawking on the deck of the ship where anybody could potentially spot him. Hell, he only narrowly avoids being caught by one of the demigods by hiding behind an ice cream cart. Dude needs to work on his planning, I think. There is no reason not to wear the hat for the entire time other than it not making very good TV because he'd be invisible. In the Clarice scenes, when she has to hide behind the lockers to avoid being spotted by the goons, we do get a little bit of information about the Iris message situation too. Apparently they didn't shut the network down, but instead they think it was Zeus who learned they were using it and thus forced Iris to do his bidding, even if it would end up hurting his own forces just as much, if not more. I believe it too, because Zeus is very much presented as that sort of god. I mean, let's not forget he was fully willing to smite the kid who brought his weapon back to him, even if this would likely push many more demigods towards Luke's side. In this little snippet, we also see those demigods start to play some myth and magic, which was just a fun bit of fan service really. Using the power of the hat, Percy tricks some random goon into getting locked inside the bar on the upper deck, and thus he's able to steal her keycard, and then after a brief chat, frees Blackjack too. I will say that at first I was a little bit bummed out that they didn't include his actual voice this time and just had Percy understand the nays, but since it seems to be such a bit part for now, I can understand them wanting to wait until season 3 to include that sort of thing. They did probably save some money in the budget this season by holding off on a casting after all. We very quickly go from this to Percy arriving in Annabeth's prison to try to save her, which was a lot faster than I originally expected. I kind of think that this episode is a bit short, and so it would have been interesting to see Percy have to overcome a few more obstacles maybe. It just feels like it was all very abrupt and there wasn't enough content, even if what we did get was very enjoyable. Percy tells her that they have to get off the ship as Clarice is after the fleece, and Annabeth tells Percy that he has to go too because the fleece is all that matters now. Since she's been cut free, she'll be able to escape anyway. Luke and some goons enter, which prompts Percy to hide, and eventually he makes his way out of the room, which does attract Luke's attention as he speaks to Annabeth about how Percy defied the will of the gods, whilst also explaining exactly where the fleece is and what it's doing right now. Very convenient exposition for Percy, and so off he goes. Not really much else to say about the scene, as it's the latter half where we get more of the story revelations. Here we cut to one of my favourite scenes in the episode where Tyson and Grover are in the midst of hot wiring a car, and once Tyson does so, both he and Grover realise that they don't know how to drive, which prompts Tyson to suggest that they should just wait for Percy to get back, and he can do it. This in turn makes Grover freak out because Percy crashed the car in a parking garage. What havoc would be caused trying to get from Port Jefferson to Camp Half-Blood? Imagine going through the sea of monsters itself, only to die in a car crash heading back to camp. We then come to what is truly a tremendous fake out. Tyson says that perhaps they need somebody who's stronger and wiser than them, somebody who can help them, and of course, the way Grover reacts to this makes you think that Tyson's referring to Poseidon. Plus, the episode has Grover turn dramatically and stare out at the sea whilst you hear the sound of waves. Thus, you expect that you're going to be seeing they're going to try to contact Poseidon, and Tyson's going to get his own moment with his dad. But what we got instead was even more satisfying. Instead, it's shown they call Sally, as this is who Tyson views as the strongest and wisest person he knows. It's honestly so adorable, and that whole scene where he's casually trying to get her to give him a ride to camp is so funny. I think my favourite parts are where Grover gets on the phone and suddenly Sally's whole vibe goes from confusion to stress, knowing that every time she speaks to this satyr, something horrible is happening to her son. However, the best part is when she tells Grover to cut the shit because she's been a mother to a demigod for 13 years and a mother to a cyclops for 1 year, which was the cutest thing ever! Side note, Percy is a 13-year-old. That makes me laugh, as once again the actors have outpaced the ages of the characters, as is tradition for most shows that use children. I also have to say, I've just loved the change of her adopting this random cyclops she found in a shelter, rather than Percy meeting him at school. I really hope they have him stay with the Jacksons after this season instead of going to live with the other Poseidon cyclops under the sea, because honestly, I think it was so powerful when he rejected Polyphemus as his brother in favour of Percy, who he knows and loves, even if they aren't the same species. Having their brotherly bond be such a focal point for the entire season and then have it mostly drop off, that'd be a big mistake, so hopefully that's not the case. Also, shout out to the background character working at the shop for the crazy lady type reaction she had going on when Sally started talking on the phone about demigods and cyclops. So off Sally goes, and then it's back to the ship where Allison's just chilling reading a magazine, and then focuses in on the golden fleece. She slowly walks up to it, and it's obviously Kronos telling her something before she storms off saying it will be done. At first when I watched this, I thought they'd rather jump the shark with this in my opinion. I wondered why they didn't just have Kronos speak outright so we could hear him saying that, because they'd already cast him and it wouldn't have mattered. However, after a little while, too long to tell you the truth, I did manage to figure out that we were supposed to not realize that they're going to go after Annabeth at this point, and thus have it be more of a shock. I suspect that if the scene with Clarice wasn't there, they would have just had Kronos openly speak, but since they have that additional scene where Clarice has to learn, and thus we the audience see that she changes her priorities and has some growth, it would get a little bit too samey. From here, it's back to Luke and Annabeth, where Luke's trying to explain to her why he can't possibly give up the Golden Fleece. If he does, then the barrier to Camp Half-Blood will be healed, and the campers, who have apparently been under siege for some time, will find the will to fight back, and this will in turn lead to them dying. What I want to know though is why are they even bothering with this in the first place? It seems to me that all they have to do is keep sailing around with the fleece and healing Kronos until he's powerful enough to properly return and lead the Titans to attack Olympus. With the current leadership, it's not like the campers are going to come and attack en masse anyway. Plus, in these early days, wouldn't it just potentially turn more people against them? It feels like they should be trying to present themselves as the better alternative to parents who don't care. I know that Kronos is as out of touch as the Olympians, but you think that after being mincemeat for a couple of thousand years, he could at least fake it for a little while before the predictable betrayal. Instead, he's hitting him with the classic, "Join me or die." Annabeth then tells Luke that she thinks the power of the fleece will be able to bring Thalia back to life, and Luke denies her, although you can see the doubt creeping in, and even then, he starts claiming if it was true, that Kronos would have told him this before he poisoned the tree. I saw a lot of book readers complain about this spoiler and claim that they think it worked better as a surprise at the end, but I would argue that seeing as she's had multiple dedicated flashbacks, and that Percy's having dreams of her, it does make a lot of sense to have this reveal here, seeing as the audience could probably very easily assume that she's going to be making that return. Otherwise, why the hell would you bother dedicating so much screen time to this character? I just think it works well. Luke then clutches his head and leaves, probably Kronos ordering him to leave so that he isn't there to protect Annabeth from the goons he sent her way, that we see in the very next scene where Clarice overhears Allison rallying the troops. It's honestly wild to me that after a year, somebody could be so far gone as to be willing to murder a defenseless child that you might have known for years and years at this point. It's just insane, although I kind of like it because it really cements them as horrible and thus makes you very hyped when they get their asses kicked. Percy makes his way into Luke's room and comes face to face with Kronos and the Fleece, whilst Annabeth finds herself alone in her prison with a giant and a bunch of rogue demigods, all who want her dead. In one of the funniest moments of the episode, Percy briefly speaks to Grandpa, who tells him he'll tell him the great prophecy in full if he leaves him the Golden Fleece, and only gets halfway through it before Percy swipes it and tries to leave, only to run right into Luke, who gets all in his feelings because Annabeth lied to him about Percy being in the room when Luke came to speak to her. Although that being said, she never actually says anything about the door opening in that scene, so Luke can't even really complain if you ask me. Also, bold strategy from Luke calling somebody a liar after his work in season 1. Come on, man. Here is where we get two pretty epic action sequences. Percy versus Luke and Clarice versus the demigods. What is there to say? Really fast-paced and exciting with great choreography. I also love that they felt so different. Clarice was well and truly laying the smackdown upon these fools, whereas Percy and Luke felt like a life and death brawl, and Percy doesn't really win so much as he survives it by escaping with the fleece. I wasn't too thrilled about some of the fight scenes back in season 1, and so this one felt really awesome to me. I especially love the Luke stab jump scare just as the elevator doors were closing. An extremely petty move as he knows that he isn't stabbing in a vital area, or at least somewhere that's going to be an instant kill, and so Percy is going to have time to use the fleece. He just wants to hurt him. I love that little tidbit. In the storage room, Clarice and Annabeth reunite and they hear the alarm go off just to let the crew know the fleece has been taken and that there are intruders aboard. They head up on deck and are confronted by some goons who are taken out by Blackjack immediately. I saw some people wondering how he could lift them with his wings, but like, you know what? Shut up. He is a flying horse, for God's sake. If this is the level you're going to nitpick, then surely nothing's going to make you happy. Percy appears and apparently there are only 8 or so guards on this entire ship, half of which Clarice soloed and the other half were wrecked by Blackjack. I know that Aiden claimed earlier on that winning the war would be easier than he thought simply due to the discord between Clarice and Percy, but I gotta say, you sure about that one, mate? Here we have a really sweet little scene with Clarice and Percy where they make peace with one another and Percy apologizes to her for using her prophecy against her. He gives her the fleece to fly home alone. He goes on to tell her that the prophecy simply meant that without friends she would fail, but good thing she has friends. Next to Tyson and Percy, this has probably been my favorite dynamic of the season, and it's made Clarice such a better character as a result. For me, her character is night and day here and has so much depth. I just hope she gets more as the show continues because it does feel like there are a lot of loose ends with her character that they can follow up with. I'm pretty keen to see her have more interactions with Ares, for instance. After Clarice flies away, Percy and Annabeth seemingly get off the ship with no real issues at all, so I guess there really were only those few guards, and Percy and Annabeth run over to Tyson and Grover. Sally turns up in a car, and I really like that you can see Percy pulling on his jacket to hide his stab wound here. I just thought it was a really nice touch. I also thought it was cute to see Tyson somewhat emulate isolating Sally, yelling at Percy to get in the car. On top of that, we have confirmation of Blowfish if you look at the bumper sticker, and remember that Percy doesn't recognize this car at all. I love Paul, so this is a fun little reference for me. We have a brief little sequence after this as they're driving off to camp, and both Grover and Annabeth are chattering away, excited about potentially getting to see Thalia again. Meanwhile, Percy's just crashing out silently in the front seat, terrified that his vision of Thalia is going to come true, and she's going to join up with Luke and Kronos. I did like that Sally noticed this and kept looking over at him. I just love those little character touches, you know? We then finish off with a scene that's there to set up the next episode. Luke questions Kronos as to why he never told him the fleece could heal Thalia, and Kronos seemingly starts to hurt him and question his loyalty. And for me, this just doesn't make sense. Kronos is in such a position of weakness that going out of his way to threaten and hurt his number one demigod servant, it feels stupid and beyond the normal incompetence of the gods. The Olympians are the rulers. They're in control, and thus I can understand stupidity born of complacency. But for Kronos to have been waiting for his moment for so long and do it this way, it feels so silly. It also makes Luke seem like a massive idiot for not turning back when there's still an opportunity to do so, because it's not going to be better under Kronos, and that's very obvious now. In the book, isn't this all a joint scheme to get them to revive Thalia and thus have an additional prophecy child? Luke knew all along. I just don't like how it was handled here in this specific instance. I know that clearly this seems to have been the plan for Kronos, because he's telling Luke to straight up kill Percy as he thinks he no longer needs him, and that Thalia will be easy to bring on side. I just think that having Luke be aware of this is the better narrative choice. I get they're going for sympathy in his portrayal, but I think this is too much. We then finish off with a finale preview, and it looks good. We have a bunch of camp preparation for the battle, a Percy battle speech, Percy meets up with his deadbeat dad again, and we get a big battle at the camp, which I really hope lives up to expectations. They've actually changed the ending to include it here, so it does need to be good. Nothing worse than a big battle to round things off that ends up feeling massively lackluster. It really would put a damper on the end of the season in such a big way. With all that being said though, these have been my opinions, and I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the episode? Did you like it? Hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.